Hey everyone, my name is Annette Zapp, and I would like to thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you to Mandy Nice and the NSCA for hosting us on their Zoom account. We really appreciate it. The Wellness Professionals in Fire and Rescue is basically a think tank of strength coaches, registered dietitians, physical therapists, athletic trainers, and scientists who work directly and currently with fire and rescue. And so we're proud today to welcome Coach John Hofman, and we really appreciate you all for joining us. We're going to attach his actual bio. It's very impressive. We'll attach it to the YouTube rebroadcast. But I would just like to tell you, Coach Hofman is basically one of the OGs in tactical training, and he's also the proud recipient of the 2018 NSCA TSAC Practitioner of the Year Award. And today he's going to be speaking about his lessons learned in his 10 years of being the civilian strength and conditioning coach for Sacramento Fire. So again, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you, Mandy.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mandy.
Sure. Well, I just want to thank, also add that thanks to you, Annette, too, for organizing this. You're a phenomenal leader in the field, as are you, John and Maureen and Megan. We're so excited as the NSCA to be able to support you and to help you share best practices. I want to let attendees know just a few housekeeping items. If you have questions, we encourage you to post those in the Q&A box. You can view that by just rolling over the bottom of your screen and click that Q&A box. You can type your question there. All questions will be answered at the end of the session, so we reserved about 15 minutes for that. So we encourage you to, again, just post your questions there. If you have thoughts, you're welcome to post them in the chat as well throughout the session. Annette and I will be monitoring that and helping you through that. And without further ado, our phenomenal presenter, John Hofman.
Oh, thank you guys. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Annie, Megan, Maureen, everybody for putting this together. It was actually kind of fun to put this together when they asked me to do it, and it was kind of like walking down memory lane. So let's get into it. All right, you heard my background. You guys can read about it later if you want. I came from an athletic background. Everyone usually wants to know if I was a firefighter. No, I'm not a firefighter, never have been, nor I don't think I'm going to be one. But if I was, I'd probably be a truckie. It's just what I've discovered throughout my lifetime of working in the fire service. But I do have my own turnouts, as you can see in the picture. They did give me my own set with my own bottom rocker, so that was a great honor for me. In the one picture there, you could see there that we trained one day the Sacramento Kings. Boogie himself was there, and we put him through a day of firefighter team building, and that was actually a lot of fun. And the top picture in the left-hand corner was my last firefighter academy on top of the Wells Fargo building. So what this is not, people need to understand, it's not about fitness standards. So don't start asking me about all the fitness standards, because that's a whole nother topic unto itself. Okay. We're going to talk about, actually starting a wellness program and what it took and where we went from nothing to something. All right. This is not about a policy. To me, policy is just words on paper. It doesn't really mean anything. In fact, your policy should reflect what you currently have, not the other way around. It's not often. I often do get calls from people going, well, what did you do over there? And I would begin to explain. And usually the follow-up was, oh, we're doing that. We have NFPA 1582 and 83. And I usually just giggle going, that's just words. It's not action. It's not about what the best programming design. Is it undulating? Is it linear? It all really works. It depends on what department, what's the shift. We're not going to get into those details. It's not the best way to exercise. Is it going to be unilateral, functional, whatever? We're going to start from ground zero and build it up. If they're not exercising, how can you tell me what the best way to exercise is? You have to start with something. Okay. And then finally, this is really about the journey that I took that hopefully will enlighten some others, because I'm a history buff and I learned from everybody else's mistakes, I guess, including my own. A little history. Now, people understand Sacramento was very forward thinking. In 1989, they actually hired an American River, the ARC track and field coach, the great Al Beta, to begin a fitness program. In fact, the fire chief during that time for Sacramento, his son ran track for Coach Beta. Coach was training his son. The fire chief walked over and says, do you think this stuff would help my fire recruits? And that's how it began. And in 91, it was so successful with the academies, they asked Coach Beta to start helping out the guys on the job. That's crazy to me because he was working with guys back in the day, the old salty dogs who didn't exercise, still smoked on the rigs. And he really was the OG, not myself, but Coach Beta was. And he was a great man. And he was on my hiring panel. What happened was over time was Coach kept enforcing this. He was still a track coach. He still taught at the community college. He even coached at Berkeley for a while. And he says, you guys want to take this serious, you need to make this a full-time position. And it took him over a decade, if not longer, to get that buy-in. So the first day, well, it's kind of crazy. In 2007, I got the job. I was shocked because there were about 800 applicants. In fact, I had to apply twice because the first round, they had about 1,600 applicants, and they wanted to make it more challenging. So they made it a little more stricter or added more rules. So I had to reapply, and somehow I was one of the final candidates. I still remember going in and doing the interview. Everybody was sitting on a computer. They wanted to see if we understood computer literacy. And I looked around and everybody was typing away. And one of the questions was about a training program. So I made graphs. I'm a coach. I don't like writing words out. I can talk, but I don't like typing all day long. So I made a graph. And I actually made a microcycles within those graphs. I was done within 10 minutes. And I thought to myself, either I rock this or I bombed it. Needless to say, I walked in for the interview. That gentleman, Coach Al Beta, was sitting there along with Deputy Chief. And this young man here, Chief Nico King, who is now a deputy chief, but at that time was a battalion chief. And they sat there and provided me questions, and I asked them, answered them, and back and forth. And I left thinking, that was cool. Not realizing, what would happen the next day. The next day they called and said, you like the job? And I was like, wait, what? Now you have to understand, I was training for the Olympics, and this was 2007, and my goal was the 2008 Olympics. But I said, yeah, sure, why not? In fact, the funny story really goes is I called my good friend who was working in the NHL at that time, and I said, I want to work with athletes. And he says, well, you have a good job. Who do you answer to? I said, the chief. He goes, who are you training? I said, firefighters. He goes, you got benefits? I said, yeah. He goes, you have a contract? I said, no, full time. He goes, why are you asking me? Take the job. And it really did start everything off. So that first day, wow, in 2007, when I got it, I was truly shocked, and I was actually honored. Little do most people realize, I actually never asked how much I was going to make. The first thing that came to my head was, if I could do this correctly and if I can do this right, we could really do some profound work. And that's pretty cool because this is an industry that wasn't even beginning yet. It was still in the infancy. And I thought, wow, if we really do this right, we can really do some great things, both sides of strength and conditioning, as well as the firefighters, and who knows, law enforcement, and so on and so forth. So I went through the background checks just like any other firefighter. That was pretty strict. I know some other friends and colleagues out there getting jobs. They have to go through the same background checks, and yeah, they're pretty strict. And the best thing I can tell people is just be honest. For example, one of the questions was, did you ever steal anything? And I looked at the investigator and I said, what age you want to start at? And I literally was like, yeah, I took 50 cents and stuff like that. And, they said, oh, you're going to do fine. You're not a perfect soul, but then again, nobody is. All right. And then came that first day. And that first day, I was riding around in Chief King's car, and he was introducing me to members in the department. And I remember thinking, man, I need a goal. Like, what are we doing here? Right. I was an athlete, so I need to know what the goal was. Well, the goal was to establish a comprehensive medical screen. In fact, Chief King says, we want a medical screening program. And I said, okay. Unfortunately, he followed up with, but don't discuss it with the firefighters. Don't bring it up around them. It won't go very well. We don't have any money for it, and you probably won't get any money for it. And yeah, figure it out. And I sat and thought, okay, let me get this straight. You want me to create something that I can't talk about and I can't fund. And he looked at me and he goes, yeah, yep, that sounds about right. Welcome to the fire service. And I said, well, why can't we talk about it? And lesson number one, firefighters are not going to receive it well, he said. they're generally paranoid and they think the city's going to use this information to fire them or use it against them, or maybe they'll lose their job. So it's really not something you should bring up or even discuss around them. And I remember thinking to myself, that's crazy, like so many people out there. But I was wrong, right? Because that is one of the roadblocks that you have to respect. It's not your opinion. That's the barrier. Your job is to figure out how to overcome it. And that's what people need to understand when they get in these debates of being fit for duty or, well, this is going to save your life. Your job is to get them to overcome these barriers, not go, oh, that's stupid or whatever. Don't degrade it because it's a real fear, right? So then they told me to, send an email out. And I said, what, Chief? He goes, send an email out. Introduce yourself to everybody. I said, I'm not really big on talking, I, my, or me. I'd rather just fly under the radar and see where this goes. He goes, nope, you need to do it. And I'm going to proofread it and you send it. I said, all right, that's the order. Needless to say, I was right because it did not go over well. In fact, one of my closest friends to this day still talks about that email going, I hated you when you wrote that. So I had this puzzle, right? What do I do? You want me to create something with no money. You want these guys to get in shape. Okay, let's figure out how do we start, right? So in the first few years, let's really take a look at what it was, right? I wasn't received well, okay? I had a lot of failures. And one of them was I wasn't received well, and rightfully so. This is not a disrespect to the firefighters, but actually a lack of my ignorance. I was following in the footsteps of Coach Al Beta, who laid the groundwork, right? He handpicked me, okay? The day after my interview, he literally looked at the other chiefs and said, don't worry about anybody else. He's your coach. And I was like, wow, what a great honor that this gentleman would say that to me. And I didn't even know who he was. So I had big shoes to fill, like you really don't want to follow in John Wooden's footsteps, right? I didn't know much about the job, okay? I mean, why would someone trust me? I didn't know much about the fire service, okay? And I really haven't done anything to earn their trust, Yeah, I come off as, I guess, a nice guy, but at the same time, who is this guy? What's he all about, Some perceived me as taking a job away from a firefighter, right? So there was I wasn't really received well. At one time, I was brought into headquarters about 6 months into the job because of the vicious rumor mill. Yes, the rumor mill. It's a real thing. And it made me understand the power of the rumor mill, right? Because perception was reality. So I had to learn how to use it to my advantage instead of my disadvantage. And reason I say I was brought into headquarters is it really did lay the groundwork for what we were going to do, because the chiefs brought me in and they said, hey, we're hearing a lot of rumblings about you. Are you running around telling people what to do? Are you telling everybody what to say? And I just said, I'm not even doing anything. Like, no one will talk to me. I don't know what you're talking about. And it made me understand the power of the rumor mill. Well, I didn't know at that time that was the introduction of my new boss as chiefs rotate divisions. And I was getting a new training division chief. And that was first meeting together, God bless her soul. And we had words at that meeting. They said, well, they gave me a big lecture and I took it, and they said, you look frustrated. And I said, it's okay. And I proceeded actually to say, this is crazy. You guys hired me to be the expert. Just let me do my job. All right. Otherwise, you hired the wrong guy. And I actually got a little heated. And I said, if you think I'm going to be a yes man, this isn't for me. I got to do what's right by the firefighters. You have to trust me. The next day, I apologized. I said, it was a little unprofessional, but at the same time, my new chief, Kim Iannucci, she was a female firefighter since 81, I apologize. And she earned the stripes, and she came in and I said, Chief, I'm sorry for losing it. And she says, no, I like your passion. You have the firefighters' interest. I'm going to give you a long leash. Don't mess up. And after that, it let me run. And after that, I was like, okay. Really what happened over that period of time, everybody was lecturing me. All right. Everybody was giving me their input. Everyone. All right. They told me what to do, what not to do, what was conflicting. This was conflicting. Do this, do that. All the information just made no sense because it was all just counterproductive, right? And it was hard to listen to everybody tell me what to do every time you try, right? You just got told you were wrong. Nope, nope, nope. So what I started to realize was really start to listen. Why are they like so conflicted? Why is the messages? Because they all wanted so much different things, right? And you really have to spend time listening to what they're saying and realize they're saying the same thing, okay? But for myself, more importantly, I had to listen. I had to learn to slow down and listen to the firefighters. My communication was horrible. I needed to be a better communicator to them. I was no longer an athlete. I was the coach now. I needed to be the leader. I needed to be the face of this health and wellness thing, okay? I was so naive, really was. I was very naive, everything from the beginning. I thinking I knew what they needed without even asking or learning. I was like, oh yeah, you need high intensity power training because that's what it looks like you do. But I was wrong, all right? I was like everyone else. You need to do this and you need to do that. But again, I was wrong. I need to listen, all right? I need to give them what they needed, not what they wanted. All right. But what did they need? The only success I actually had in the first few years was I got the job and I didn't get fired. They were the only successes I actually had in the first few years. So you could see it wasn't as easy as many people think when you get the job. It's like getting a franchise and you open up the box and it says good luck inside. There's no instructions or directions. It's kind of like, all right, let's figure this out. So where did I start, right? How do you find out what you need, right? What was the plan, right? I needed a plan. I needed a place that I could demonstrate my abilities, right? Health and wellness survey was a great start. What better place than that? Also, the academy, right? The academy to me was like, all right, these will be my disciples. I can get it done. But that was only one fraction. It's the short term and the long term. Your academy will actually be the long-term successes. They will be your disciples. The in-service guys you need to get today, they're the short term, right? Over time, more recruits come in, more people retire, they understand you, right? Now you have your little minions. So your academy is going to be, will be for for the future of your program, right? So how you set up the program at the academy is very important in terms of training, education, how you teach them how to work out, what exercises, okay? For example, we would do a lot of like certain exercises that I realized probably weren't the best. And then years later, they would say, well, we did them in the academy. Ah, well, you're 10 years older now. I don't think you should be doing that. So I realized let's modify it for the future in terms of exercise selection. So with the survey, I created 18 questions that was very confidential. You have to make sure it's confidential. I needed their, what they wanted. I wanted to know what they needed. And does the environment actually match how they felt, right? I knew we would make this successful. I also understood that it wasn't my program, it's theirs. I'm just the person who can make it happen. And I knew I had to take the bull by the horns. All right. And that meant station visits. Now, when I say about backtrack for a second, I apologize. The academy training is really planning, motivation, integration, and education. That's your academy. Very performance-based. But now I had to take the bull by the horns because no one was going to come to me. In fact, again, I wasn't well received. I needed to figure out a way to bridge the gap. So if they're not going to come to me, I'm going to them. See, I'm from Jersey. I'm going after it. So that was very intimidating. I can't lie. Every day I would look up at the telestaff and I'd print out the log, and I created a log book on Excel to track out where I was going, whose numbers. I went, so I was balanced. I didn't spend too much time in one battalion over another or one fire station to give it appearance that I may play favorites. Again, that rumor mill. So I was very cautious of how much time I spent at places. I also didn't want to give the perception that I was hanging out or trying to be their friend. I was their coach. You always respect their home. You would call before you arrive. You would ask permission. You have to learn their insignias. I would memorize their names, Engineer Smith, Captain Joe, like whatever, but you always addressed it as such. Do you mind if I come over? Do you mind if I talk to so-and-so? Firefighter Joe requested that I come over. Do you mind, Captain, if I stop by? No, we're having training today. So you have to be patient. You have to have tough skin. They may not want you over there, even though the young firefighter requested you. Maybe they have something unplanned that you're not aware of. Okay. So I'm like, all right, well, let's go after them. All right. The wellness survey was huge for me. All right. It was confidential, and you have to make sure that they feel that secure. It was simple. It allowed them to express themselves, and don't take it personal. Holy cow. When I was creating this PowerPoint, I was laughing, thinking back to what people said to me. The first year we had 800 firefighters. I think I had 50 respondents. I was like, okay, 50 out of 800. Well, that's a start, I guess. They did it. And then you go through the survey, and when you give them a way to express themselves, sometimes you'll read some interesting things. And at first I got a little, my ego got the better of me, but again, you keep it in check and you just take it with a grain of salt. But there were some good caveats in there. You did get some good information in terms of how to build this thing. What could we need? What will they need? What do they want? For example, we created a station house library, all right, with fitness and wellness. We bought the nutrition books for each fire station and the Heart Healthy Resource Guide. They were one of the first things I did, and I got this from the survey. Now, some people will say, big deal. But when you work with a city fire department that's usually spread thin with terms of resources, you giving them anything is often received very well. All right. So now they were getting these things and they go, hey, that's kind of cool. This recipe book is pretty good. It's got a firefighter on it. And they were free at that time. I think I had to give a $50 donation, and I did it out of my own pocket. And so even though it sounds ridiculous, they really did go over well. And we started to create a station house library, so every station had the same information. All right. So we start to put the puzzle. When you have a puzzle, right, you open up the box and the pieces are everywhere. So you grab the corners, right? You got to search for the corners and you start building slowly. And I was like, okay, my survey gave me something. Yeah, it gave me a lot of wise ass remarks, like this guy's a butthead and this guy should be fired. And it was crazy. And you're like, okay, got to take it with a grain of salt. All right. From the start, the academy was very challenging. When I got hired in 07, it was March, and I watched the first academy. They told me to sit back and just observe it. And it was probably 1 month away from graduation. I also knew that this would be allow me a time to participate in the actual academy drills. So when I was watching, I was asking, can I participate? And of course, they're not going to tell you no. They're going to see if you can do it. I was in the peak physical shape of my life because I was an athlete. So I knew that my work ethic, I could outwork them physically. We did what was called a tower drill, and it's like a waterfall in terms of running and stuff. And it was a very traditional thing that they often did. So they gave me my first turnout jacket. They put a helmet on me. They gave me an SCBA bottle, and they gave me a 2.5 pack, a 2.5 inch hose pack. And I just got in line and I followed the crew. And it was very hard, and I was pretty winded, but I would not show weakness. I wasn't going to do it. And so when they gave me my equipment the first time, they just dropped it in front of my feet. By the end of the tower drill, I knew they were watching because they always are. They came over and they even said, hey, not a bad job. And they took my equipment and they actually said, get some water. And I could tell their demeanor changed. When I first walked into the academy, I said, good morning. And nobody would talk to me. Who's this guy? What's he doing here? Right? And so I wasn't again well received, but because of that tower drill, I saw a glimmer of hope because I knew they were watching and I wasn't going to quit. Right? We went to a team building class for the academy. I remember the drill masters took all of us to a team building class, and everyone sat there, and they actually sat away from me like it was high school cafeteria. Little did I know that there was one captain at that time who was working in the training division that actually did talk to me, but we would talk baseball because his son played baseball at Arizona and we got along. And he became part of the training staff at the academy and he sat next to me. And I didn't realize how well respected he was. He actually had the gold star for a save, a rescue, like 5 kids. And basically over time, the whole day was unique. I remember the proctor even saying to the staff, I can feel the tension here. And it's almost like a coach sucks session. And the proctor even said, the guy didn't even do anything yet. And the turning point for the bonding of me with the staff came from the proctor asked, does anybody know the coach's name? And the room went silent. And they all kind of stood back and they went, coach, as a wise ass remark. But a few of them were like, yeah, he is a human being, I guess, right? But it also made me go, I don't know their first names, so I can't get mad at them, right? So that was unique. That kind of brought us together. Now they said, all right, we have a new academy, 07-2 is your class, let's go with it. Okay, let's do it, right? I also realized that when the old academy, they ran a lot, right? Because the recruits did whatever the fitness professional was training for. If he was training for a half marathon, then they would all train for a half marathon. If he was training for, a triathlon, they would all run for that. It was whatever the coach of that day was working out for. And I said, that's madness. That would be ridiculous. So we had an athletic trainer on staff. And I said, well, I don't need that. If I do my job correctly, why do I need an athletic trainer? Because he was on contract. Okay. And I just felt wasn't going to work. We had a professional fitness professional, but again, I was their coach. There's a difference, right? We weren't going to train them for whatever I thought. We were going to train them for the specifics of the sport, and that was the fire service. They did a lot of high intensity power training, a ton of it, and which also led to a ton of injuries, including all the mileage. They used to run 13 miles sometimes. I was like, what? All right. So I wanted a more strength-based program, bring it back to the old school method, right? Of, functional training, if you want to call it that. They did lots and lots of running, right? I wanted less running, more intervals. Okay. So class starts off, you check in with the staff at 6 a.m., right? You check in with the staff and the recruits. You do your dynamic warm-up. That's a very important time for the coach because you get to teach these individuals the specific exercises. I controlled the water breaks. I controlled the transitions from the gym to the track. I controlled everything in the beginning. They have to get used to being hot and they have to get used to that nasty taste in their mouth. So it wasn't just feed the system. It was, we feed the system at the appropriate time. Then we did a workout. Then we had some type of motivation. I'm a big believer in motivation, right? And the staff started watching this and understand I spent hours the night before planning things out. I would have lists and diagrams of everything, where everything would go. So in the morning, I'd show up and give it to the recruit leader, and they knew how to set it up. It was very clear, right? Because time is always of the essence. My job is to make things less difficult, okay? It's to make things easier for everybody else. So same goes with the firefighters. I had to make this wellness thing easy, right? But one of the motivational strategies we did was who said it. And I would have a list of quotes from different athletes and coaches and leaders. And we would say, who said it? And they would guess. And if they got it wrong, I would tell a little story about the individual who did, and then they would do push-ups. Now I wanted to see if they did push-ups together. If they got it right, I did push-ups. And the staff wanted to see if they would do push-ups with me. And they always did. And that's that team building. We would always end on a positive, inspire them. And we also didn't make things punishment. We rang the beta bell for success. We didn't do things for punishment. I'm like, if you did something good, ring the bell, right? Positive reinforcement. So the plan evolves over time. I realized I needed to know what we had at each station. So you start to do an equipment list. You do an inventory list. So simple, what do we have, right? I set up contracts and discounted prices with local fitness equipment vendors, right? Because I said, well, if we have no money, maybe they can use their station house fund. So I set up a discounted program with specific vendors in the area. So the gentlemen or the firefighters could purchase it for their own use or the firehouse. I went through the union and set up a discounted gym membership for everybody in the union. All right. Even those who already have current members got the discount. I had contacted local gyms, asked if they had any old equipment they'd like to donate. I redesigned the academy gym into a state-of-the-art facility, right? I went out to each station and repaired whatever needed to be fixed. After watching the firefighters, I noticed how they took care of their own equipment and how much pride they had. So I figured if I did the same with fitness equipment, maybe they'll respect it more. And it worked, because one captain actually took notice and wrote a letter to my supervisor that he was impressed. Understand, I paid for this out of my own pocket. The wires, the cables, the leather, the foam. The wellness committee was very important, right? And this is very helpful because over time I knew we had to move things. We needed to know where we needed to go. There are so many pieces in play here. You have workers' comp, you have risk management, you have all these things, okay? Also, the inventory list is very helpful because maybe some guys rotate out of a firehouse and they left the leg press machine there. So the new guys come in, get this leg press out. I get the stake side, yank it out, store it at training. And then one day the other guys are like, hey, we want a leg press. Here you go. So again, I was able to switch things around. Okay. And then we needed a logo. This was my first logo, but I was told it was not very balanced, I guess. It was a little sexist. So I said, okay. And this was the one we got approved. And why is that important? Because I thought we needed a logo. Everybody had a duty shirt. Why can't fitness? So I actually drew both of these with my own hands and created it with the help of the ideas from other people. And this became huge. Now we had an identity. We had duty shirts, and firefighters will do more for you for t-shirts than anything else. Okay. And that's one of the ways we got the fitness going. All right. And then we had annual multi-company drills. Now, your wellness committee is very important. All right. It's in educating and guiding me in the right direction. I was flying blind. So why not rely on others? It was very important to understand how one decision affected the others. You know, if you implement a wellness program, how's workers' comp going to be affected? How about safety? How about the union? How about, risk management? It taught me the inner workings of the system, but also helped me develop the relationships within that system, okay? I had a senior officer, I had a union rep, I had a risk manager rep, I had a safety officer, I had a workers' comp rep, I had a firefighter, and not the one who's fitness. I wanted the fat guy who smoked cigarettes and hated it because he gave me all the roadblocks, all right? It's also, this wellness committee gave me great ideas. And remember, no idea is bad when you have no resources. You have to keep an open mind. So you need to be resourceful when you have no resources. All right. And we had an EMS personnel. So I started to see how the inner workings go. And I developed the relationships with each of these individuals, which was very important down the road as this thing starts to go. All right. Our the policy for the department for drills was you had to show up, but you didn't have to participate when it came to fitness. So 4 crews showed up each 90 minutes. And the very first time I sat there, I set everything up. It was hot as hell. I had the mats out. I had, tents up. I had a pop-up tent, and the crews rolled in. And they said, all right, what are we doing? Some knew, some didn't. And they were old school assessments, the 1.5 miles, all right, push-ups, sit-ups, all those old school military things. And I sat back and watched and thought, the only people that are running are the runners. I need to help the other ones, the ones who aren't running. And I realized these assessments are too difficult. A 1.5 mile run, a 45-year-old, 50, 60-year-old guy ain't gonna wanna do that. I need to still get to figure out a number of where they're at, but without killing them, okay? Because we're not doing a research project, right? So we decided to go with the new International Wellness Fitness Initiative, all right? Again, it's not a research program. It's the FDNY protocol we use, the step mill. We did the push-ups, pull-ups, plank, grip, body comp, and vertical jump. They love the vertical jump, right? It was fun. You jump up, you touch it, you come back down. They just sometimes out-jump themselves or smack their hands on the flags. So we went from a very low participation number in the first year, okay? We had about 100 people who did it, that mile and a half push-up sit-up one. But once we started to change things, we started to see momentum. But that first year I made the change in '08, my goodness, '09, I was running around everywhere. Hey, coach, how do you put the metronome on? Hey, coach, how do you use the body fat thing? Hey, coach, how do you use the step mill protocol? And I would just run around this big gym, never getting upset. Even if they had the directions and the button said, start here, you can't get upset. And I'm talking 800 firefighters took 2 months to get through. So the jokes you hear on the first day are going to be the same jokes you hear on the last day. They get a little old, but you have to act like it's the first time you heard it. You have to be patient. Now, we had a hiring freeze, okay? And that changed a lot of things, right? Make your multi-company drills, my fitness assessments, fun. I wanted the firefighters to enjoy it. It's not a science project. I wasn't using it as like, oh, these are the standards. And no, I wanted to overcome the barriers and show them that this can be fun and proactive, okay? And so over time, it could give us good information. You will start to see trends as a coach when you put it into your database system. And that gives you ideas, you can see where you're going. They're just assessments. And understand, it's very important to use the correct terminology. We're not testing and we're not evaluating, okay? Tests are used to examine someone's knowledge. Evaluation is the process of making a judgment. An assessment, well, we're just providing a recommendation. And if you ever go to a union meeting, I promise you, use the other two, you're going to have a little difficult challenge on your hand. You are just assessing legally. All right. We're not doing clinical scientific work and we don't have any fitness standards. And my good friend George Carbajal said it. They've been putting out fires for over 100 years. You don't need to be fit to do the job. We have to want them to be fit to do the job. All right. So as you can see here, we went from age 39 to age 43, the average age for our department, because of the hiring freeze and the brownouts. We went from a pretty old department. The average participation went from 160 to 410. You'll never get 100%, by the way. Estimated VO2 went from 33 to 43. Obviously, strength went down, pull-ups went up, body weight stayed about the same. Again, we're not doing a science project, but if you look at all my data, you'll see that we were in this region and it was good. We saw improvements, okay? So how do you get people to use more toothpaste, right? That's what I always ask my young coaches. And the reason why I ask them that is don't make it complex. You just make the hole bigger. Most people will make things so difficult on how to overthink it. And you just go, make the hole bigger. They squeeze more out. They use more toothpaste. All right. We have a tendency as coaches to overthink things and make things more complicated. Sometimes when you have no resources, simple works. Because of my working relationships with the wellness committee, I began to ask questions. Risk management and workers' comp invited me to meetings on injuries, for example. And they asked me to look at some of them. And they were discussing all these crazy ideas on how to reduce it. And all I said was, these are superficial. What about foam rollers? And well, how much is that going to cost? And I was like, $250. And they were huge. In fact, we put on a training drill. They were so successful. Everybody loved it. The firefighters felt better. They adapted this concept throughout the entire city. So we purchased 32 foam rollers. That year's drill, now I had 90 minutes. They gave me an additional 90 minutes. So we had a total of 3 hours in the morning and 3 hours in the afternoon. And I had the ability to choose whatever education I wanted. I chose the education a lot of times based on the surveys, not what I thought. Then they had 90 minutes for their assessments. And we started to incorporate other things like fit testing. So we were starting to streamline the process. I didn't think it was right to keep pulling firefighters out of the house. And then we started to create exercise manuals with pictures so they understood. And you have to pick the right exercises, right? So now it comes into 2008 to 2010. I remember the chief telling me I passed probation, but I'm going to be furloughed one time a month because of budgets. We were also browning out stations to help with the budget. It maintained a hiring freeze, and I was trying my best to earn their trust, but I had no more academy to train. I only had one, and then we shut it down. So this is where I decided to partake in in-service drills, USAR drills, hazmat drills, rescue drills, you name it, I did it. Our battalions went from 4 to 3. Our hiring freezes were quite long, and we had 3 brownouts, meaning the stations had rolling brownouts. And I was still, again, trying to earn their trust. So I wanted to move to the halftime budget, right? This is where I was like, okay, where can we go? What are some of my successes? Well, I continued to maintain the survey. We changed the fitness assessments from something running old military to a more comprehensive one that was a little more fun. I had working with our internship program. We had an EMS internship program, so I started to train them, and I started to work at our rehab program. Okay, and finally, I did my first 24-hour ride-alongs. I'm like, I'm going to jump into this one. Okay, the rehab program is when I introduced myself to Ahmed. Okay, I asked for all the people to send. I said, Doc, who do you send all the firefighters to for rehabilitation? And he gave me a list of like 60 names. All right. So I said, all right, thank you. I contacted all 60 people within that in the area and said, come on out and have a firefighter day. This is 2009. Come on out. We're going to put you through firefighter day. We're going to put you in gear. We're going to get you ready. And 10 people replied. So they came out. We developed relationships. The training staff put them through a day. And then we all gave them hose. We provided the addresses to the firefighters of these individuals within a specific area. And it was a huge success because now we were bridging the gaps. We were letting them know that they're going to work with me, I'm going to work with them, and it's all for the betterment of the firefighter. All right. It allowed for better communication between all the parties. I remember my deputy chief was just ecstatic with this idea, going, this is forward thinking. But again, I was one coach, 800 firefighters, you need help. So developing the relationships now with the physical therapists was very important. And now they had an understanding of what the firefighters were exposed to. And they also had hoses, right? Like rolls, like 1.5 inches, 1 3/4, 2.5, to apply into their physical therapy, which made the firefighters feel more comfortable. My ride-alongs were 3 shifts. I did an A shift, a B shift, and a C shift. Actually, those pictures from my very first ride-along. I did 24-hour shifts, and the very first one was just amazing, actually. My very first call that came in, no one would talk to me. They were like, what are you going to tell us how to work out? And I said, no, I'm here to watch. The EMS call came in. I got on the ambulance, and they said, do you know CPR? And I said, yes. And they made me do chest compressions. And I will be honest, it was profound because we pulled up to the hospital and the gentleman lived. The medics saved his life. And I was like, oh my God. And we came out of the hospital and I said, that was amazing. And they looked at me and they said, who's your football team? What? Who's your football team? I said, what do you mean? You just saved someone's life. And they said, yeah, we don't celebrate things we're supposed to do. That's how it's supposed to go. And I felt about this big. And I had such admiration for these individuals now, thinking, oh my God, they're right. You don't hear about the successes. You only hear about the failures. And that was the day that really made me understand how compassionate and how hardworking these individuals are. And I was like, oh my God. Then I told you about the furloughs, right? Due to budget constraints and cutbacks, the city recommended my position be cut half-time. This was like, no. Okay. And this was a serious concern with the fire chief and the deputy chief and risk management, because they started to see this thing start to work. They started to go, hey, this is working, man. Coach is making headway. And so they took it upon themselves to fight for my job. I was blown away. So what did they do? Well, we looked at injuries, but this slide right here is basically the cost of Canadian injuries. 65% were categorized as strains and sprains. We all know that. Total cost of claims were over 500,000. This is the Calgary, I believe, Calgary. 77% were strain related. Knee, back, and injuries were the most costly. Most strains and sprains were sustained while attending fire. Physical training was associated with a high cost of injuries. And fireground operations attributed to 18%. So you could see there was a lot of injuries in terms of the cost justification. But for us, risk management decided to look at it from two different ways, from a part-time contractor to the full-time position. What they discovered within those two different time periods, from 2001 to 2006, the average claim for injuries were 90. And in 2007, it was 91. In 2000, the claims actually were reduced by $626 per claim, musculoskeletal claim, without the increased costs of hospital bills or anything like that. And they started to say, this is a savings of $56,000. And this was just like a rough thing that they put together to justify my job. But they started to see, wait a second, this is working. I was like, wait, how did you guys do this? And this was a game changer for us. They now started to look at how to justify the position, and by showing the cost or the return on investment. The average salary for a firefighter, which was my starting salary, was $64,000. You know, wasn't a lot of money, but you could see simply by reducing some of the little strains and sprains, it saved itself. Okay. So because they were able to validate this, they saved the job. They didn't cut it back to half time, thank God. I just still had my one furlough a month. The brownouts, right? We had rolling brownouts, and the call volume went down. We were at full capacity in 07, 08. It went to one rolling brownout. 09, we went to two rolling brownouts. In 2010, it was three rolling brownouts. But the reason I put this in here is you will notice the call volume never changes. In fact, it only goes up usually. So the work demand is still the same, but there's less people. So this is going to add strain to their bodies. This is going to add, you know, more injuries, more costs. That's what everybody was assuming, all right? This is going to increase the workload. Our population is getting older because we're not actually hiring, right? Department was getting older, the call volume increased. It would be safe to assume injuries would go up, but they didn't. Okay, as you can see here, our number of injuries spiked from 07 to 08 before I got there. And then we saw a decrease. Then we saw it go up again because of the brownouts. But the total paid on musculoskeletal claims started to drop. So we started to go, the severity of the injuries must be being reduced. The total claims on dollars started to kind of level out. Lost days and modified duties where we actually saw the savings. Because modified duty is usually associated to the department. Lost days comes out of like workers' comp or the city. At least that's what they told me. And this is where we started to see the savings. Instead of the severity of the injury being so harsh that they stayed off duty, they were provided modified duty because it wasn't so excessive. All right. This was huge for me because now I could start working with the injured. As you saw, the aerobic capacity started to increase. So guys started to buy into this idea of exercise. It's not so scary, all right? Even though they're getting older, people were getting in better shape. Henceforth, the severity of injuries going down. All right, so now I'm getting this puzzle and I'm building it and clearing out the weeds and seeing the pieces. And I started to go, all right, we're just getting started. So 2010, I get cocky. Guys are starting to embrace me. They're starting to like me. Things are moving well. We're getting participation more and more in the wellness surveys. We're getting more and more in the fitness. So I said, excuse me, Chief, can we go for the Assistance to Firefighter grant? And he did green light it. He says, yes, John, you can actually apply for it. Now, understand, I never applied for a grant in my life. I didn't even know how to write one. All right. So what was the problem? Well, I never wrote a grant. Didn't even understand what procurement was. I thought it was a funny word. I needed to select peer fitness trainers. I needed to streamline our medical and physicals. We had USAR physicals, hazmat physicals, DMV physicals. And every time we had physicals, everybody was pulled out of the fire station for a physical. It's ridiculous. I wanted to streamline it. One-stop shop. We send you once and you get it all done. Done. The wellness committee really helped me in terms of how to write a grant. From the fitness equipment I got from the surveys, I knew what to purchase. I knew what they wanted. We got bumper plates, kettlebells, and the advanced motion trainer. I started to piece together what was being offered in the hazmat, USAR, and threw myself into the medical side so I could figure out what tests we needed based on NFPA standards and recommendations, but also what else? Let's be forward thinking. And we really influenced it more on chronic inflammation and then built it from there. And I got $1.2 million. And that was a huge, huge win. I still remember risk management going, God bless Barbara Brenner. She sat in the meeting when we were awarded it, and she said, everyone at this table thought we wouldn't get this. The only one that believed in it was John, and God damn it, he did it. So now the assistant firefighter grant, we got the kettlebells. I got peer fitness trainers, but I wanted anyone with a passion because we weren't going to pay them. It was asking too much of them anyway, right? I couldn't expect them to do this for, they had to do it because they wanted to. So it was open to anyone. And I had 21 applicants. So I said, all right, let's do 21. That's cool. And we found out what each one did and what their expertise is. And we all got them certified through the American Council of Exercise and the Peer Fitness Trainer Program. We purchased kettlebells for all the fire stations. We bought bumper plates for them all. I got the Precor Advanced Motion Trainer for them, which they all loved. And then we also purchased suspension training, the TRX training system, and got all our peer fitness trainers trained up on them. All right. Then the medical screening program. Well, understand that the initial program was going to be paid for, but how do you maintain it is the real key. So the baseline year was really the whole kit and caboodle. But the big caveat that people don't realize is it wasn't mandatory. Everything I did was voluntary. All right. Because we only had about 10 firefighters, I had to streamline all these different tests. So we would only have to send them one time. And that in itself was maddening. But we were able to pull it off. I wanted to focus the medical screenings on inflammation. I wanted the CBCs. I wanted obviously triglycerides and cholesterol, EKG. We got cardiac stress tests for the first year. Then we scaled it back. But this became our entry level physical, okay, with spirometry. And then we incorporated what was called the Alere bladder screening cancer kit, because it was actually some studies done in San Francisco firefighters. And this was very high performing and a simple, inexpensive test to test for certain cancers. And this was also easy to apply. Again, forward thinking. You got to do your research. The way we scaled it back was every 3 years would be 30 and over, because we only had like 10 firefighters who were 20. So we just threw them in the same category. Every year would be 50 and over. Every 2 years was 40 to 50. So we had to change it according to our age base. It was so successful that first year that risk management wanted to include more over time. They said, how else can we fund this? This is amazing. In 2011, the way I was able to sell this to my firefighters was, look, we got this grant. We're going to offer you these blood screenings if you would like. One of the important things that had to be known was no documentation would ever be sent to the city, but only to the firefighter. I had to rest assure them that they were never going to be at harm's way or in jeopardy of their job. And that was a huge one. And here's how I did it. That educational day for 2 months in the multi-company drill, I had a sign-up sheet. We had an educational session on heart disease and how the job is going to kill you. Everybody signed up after that. Then after they signed up, I would call each one and say, would you still like to participate? This was an enormous challenge on my part because it took me over a year because I only had so many time slots available because they had to fast. It was really, really a lot of fun. But when I called, a lot of times they would say, do I have your word that I won't get fired? Sometimes I had to walk them over to Ahmed to get it done, okay? But we had to make sure that they felt comfortable, right? If they didn't, it would have killed the program. I wanted to make sure that they were safe. And that's a true story. A lot of individuals did say, do I have your word that I won't get fired? And I said, yes, you do. And I would stand by that. So what do you think our participation rate was for our program? 100%, 20%? We had a 92% participation rate in terms of the medical screening program. And again, it was voluntary. There were times that individuals would say, Coach, I don't want to do it. but I will go to my own healthcare provider. Could you tell me what tests to get? And I would, as long as they did it. I don't care. And that was huge. The USAR guys have to do it, so that was easy too. But we had a 92%, and that's why risk management came back and said, this is incredible. And the big turning point upon the union side was a simple little phone call from one of the union presidents. And he called me up and he said, Coach, this medical screening thing is amazing. And I laughed and I said, well, why is that? And he says, they found something with me. And I said, okay. And he goes, and I was ready to lawyer up, go fight them, like I always do. I'm the union rep. He goes, and I walked in with my guns ablazing. And he says, the reps, the workers' comp said, you did coach's program year 1 and you had nothing. You did the medical screening in year 2 and you did nothing. And you had medical screening year 3 and we found something. It's presumptive. And he was blown away and said, we are looking at this all wrong. This actually is better protection, not going to put us out of jobs. And that's when they wrote it into their MOU. Yes, the union started to write into their MOU fitness and medical screenings based on coaches' stuff. That was enormous. We found another young firefighter at 42 years old who had 8 stints put in. That was enormous. I had an older firefighter who cursed me out one time and he says, my numbers are off and I'm an idiot. And I said, you're probably right. And I recommend he go get a test, and he came back with a lung disorder and he became an advocate. And he was huge. And these successes just launched us to the stratosphere. So then it was the second half. Well, what do you do now, right? We got a medical screening program. They got fitness exercises. Everybody's working out. Awesome. What do we do next? Well, little story. That's my girl, Sue. God bless her. She's awesome. She's retired now and she's a firefighter. And she's one hell of a firefighter. In fact, she was an engineer. And Sue was walking on the treadmill one day on light duty, and I walked over to her and I said, how you doing? And she goes, you can't help me. And I said, okay, tell me your story. And she says, I injured my back. I was caught in a propane explosion, blah. I have L4, L5, yada, yada, yada. And I said, how long you been caught up in this worker compensation problem of this vicious cycle? She's like, all my career, and I'm tired of it. She was overweight, she couldn't work, and she was in morbid pain all the time. So I threw myself now into this area of reconditioning, right? I had to learn more about it. I reached out to experts. Dr. McGill was very beneficial and helpful, and I learned everything I could and started to go, well, let's try this, Sue. And things started to work. And Sue started to become an advocate for me because she started feeling better. And then her back felt great. And she ended up losing like 30 pounds. And she became so happy. And as you can see, I have this picture there purposely because she rides her Harley now and smiles every day, God bless her soul, because she doesn't have back pain. We gave her hope back. And this was a huge success. I actually was able to help her. And others started going, hey, if your back hurts, you got to go see coach. You got to go see coach. So now we started to educate them on back stuff. And as you can see, the numbers started to go down big time in terms of costs, how much the injuries were costing us. All right. You can actually look at the cost per claim, per 1,000 calls. We were having success. They were listening to me. But again, I wasn't running around saying, hey, do this, do that. I was just there. If you need me, call me. Total injury costs were steadily declining from 1.2 million down to $740,000 during my time. The average injury rate will be 84, but they're going to get hurt. It's physically demanding. It's no two ways about it. But at the same time, the severity and things started going down. They saw some benefits in terms of cost savings. They showed that injuries and exercise actually cost 1/3 of all injuries. And this was problematic for me, this study. Workers' comp came to me one day and said, our injuries were getting out of control because everybody's doing all this high intensity power training. And my comment was, don't tell them to stop. And they said, well, we have to, they're injuries. I said, don't do it. Trust me, trust me. Remember those relationships? They did. And they asked why. I said, because they don't know what the difference between exercise, strength training, running, or high intensity power training is. They just lump it all together. So if you tell them to stop doing this, they're going to take it as stop everything, because the rumor mill will spread and say they're not going to cover you. However, pain is a good thing sometimes. When you hurt, you stop doing it. And they did. And that's when they reached out to me. Coach, my shoulder hurts. What do you got for me? Because they already trusted me now. And I could change it. And I could make it more beneficial for them. And it was huge. And that's one of the big reasons why we were so successful. I told them, if you tell them to stop everything, they're going to stop everything. They don't know the difference. So exercise and injuries, the average injury rate per year was about 17 when it came to exercises, the highest being 23 at Sacramento, the lowest being 10. The average claim due to exercise was around $4,000, almost $5,000, okay? Having no exercise would make it worse due to the severity of injuries that would occur, okay? So this is what they showed in that study. I apologize, this is that old study. But what we found out at Sacramento was what type of exercise cost the most. That's what I wanted to know. And running did. Thank God I hate running. I'm a big guy. The cost of running, actually, running costs the most money for us. Usually the treadmill. The circuit would go out and they'd smack their head or pull a hamstring. Okay. Cardio-based training averaged about 24% of all of our injuries. High intensity power training averaged about 22%. Regular exercise was about 42%, but the severity, that was like ticky-tack stuff, because we educated our firefighters on recording everything. I don't care. You cut your pinky, report it. For every injury associated with high intensity power training was about equal to 3 injuries of just normal basic lifting. So the severity of the intensity power training was enormous. Like if your shoulder went, it blew out, versus, oh, I have a little impingement. Average low back was about 30 per year. The second most injury were shoulders, about 9. Third was knees, then foot, then ankle. Our low back costs went like this in 5 years. We went from 38 to 22. That was my last year there. As you can see, the cost started to drop and we saw significant savings. We educated our firefighters. We told them how to work out. But more importantly, as a coach, I encouraged them to work out whatever they like doing. I didn't get in call of like specifics. First, they have to do it. And if they like doing it, then we can make it better. Second of all, you can't get caught up in, oh, they're using someone else's program. Don't be critical. They're doing what you asked them. They're working out. Now, help them if they ask for it. But understand that a lot of times they're showing you the workout because they're prideful. They're almost like, hey, Dad, look, I got this work. And I'm like, cool. If you're unfamiliar with it, ask to look at it. If you see something on there that would be harmful maybe to their low back, you could just say, I wouldn't recommend this, but all of it's good. Go for it. The rest of it's good. All right. So then we had our final act. The union written into their MOU, a fitness component, which just blew me away. In fact, because of that, workers' comp was able to get better coverage to the firefighters off duty, if you can believe that. We had a return to duty policy that was enhanced. We had a light duty policy that was put into place to allow firefighters to spend 90 minutes with me no matter where they were at. So if you were assigned to EMS to do PCRs, you got 90 minutes with me for reconditioning. I was able to convince the staff that having these individuals on light duty is a wasted resource. We got to get them back. We don't want firefighters pushing papers. We want firefighters back where they belong because that's their job. Risk management took over the medical screening program for me, which was an enormous off my plate because that was a monster. But now it was on cruise control. They got it and the firefighters loved it and things were working well. And because the treadmills were getting old and they were costing us a lot of issues and breaking down, I decided this is going to be it. I'm going to write another grant. And so what did we do? We were able to get the non-motorized treadmills. In fact, God bless Woodway. They gave me a demo at the time. I know that's not one of their pictures, but they gave me a demo. We put it at 4 different stations to let them try it out. We got feedback from the firefighters. They still had their old ones, but a lot of them liked this. In fact, the old timers actually liked just walking on it. And that was really shocking to me. I thought the younger ones would. So we got 32 non-motorized treadmills, and now we're going green as well. So that was another huge success. And this was enormous in terms of injury reduction. So as you can see, I started to put the pieces together, and you start to realize it's not just about fitness. See, that's why it's called a health, wellness, and injury prevention program. You got all these inner pieces working together. You got the union, the firefighters, the city, the admin, and in there you got all these other components, and they're all integrated together. And you're the manager of it all. You're the ringleader. You are the one that makes it go. You have to work the relationships. You have to build the trust. You have to have foresight. You have to allow the firefighters to have say. You have to put your ego aside. So who should be the coach is always the question. Firefighter, certified personal trainer, certified strength coach, physical therapist, athletic trainer. See, I'm very cautious. In 2007, I didn't have boundaries or rules. I just had a really long leash. And I was able to run off the reservation. And I was talking to Mandy prior to this saying, I was actually lucky that we didn't know anything. So we could experiment. But now we're knowing more, and there's going to be boundaries for people, right? And I don't want people copycatting crap. So whoever sees your program has to be an expert with experience in reconditioning. He has to have experience in team training for the academy, experience in personal training in terms of rapport when you work with them individually. You should have about 10 years of worth of experience in this industry, all right? Understand the language, traditions, customs of the group. Fire stations have colors. They have different logos. You want to know the history about the fire department, all right? So your roles and responsibilities, you're really consulting with substation, teaching classes. You're instructing the peer fitness trainers on training. You're trying to ensure optimal training, right? You have to be a liaison up the command of structure, the workers' comp people, the insurance people, the union leadership, be able to communicate effectively, work with each group. You have to create longevity, sustainability. If you leave, it should still be able to run, okay? But one big time person could affect positive change over the course. Inspiration, motivation. I can honestly tell you all, there probably isn't a week, and I get goosebumps, that I don't hear from a Sacramento firefighter saying, you influenced my life, you saved me. My wife asks me, is it a bad day if you don't hear someone say, you saved my life today, thank you, coach? I go, no, that's what we're supposed to do. We don't celebrate our victories. So I often tell people, you can put a firefighter, but that's kind of problematic because is he a firefighter or is he your coach? That's hard. I think you would only get about, 50% of what you really want in terms of return on investment. It's a really hard one because you also have to build that trust. It can be done. Ian Crosby was a great example in Calgary. Luke Latham in Florida, Martin County, he's another one, again, doing a great job as a firefighter, but you're going to have to find that right person. Certified personal trainer, definitely is a customer service based industry, right? There are respectable qualities with each certification, but I think you should have someone more geared towards competitive training versus a health center, okay? But it can be done. There are certain things that are very valuable. A lot of times people want to talk about the certified strength coach, like personal trainers and group exercise instructors. The strength coach helps to improve fitness, but strength coaches differ from others in an important way. The clients they work with are focused on improving their performance in a skill of a sport of some type. All right. Sometimes it's not just get in shape. You want to increase athletic performance while reducing athletic injuries. So it's another way of looking at things. And these are just what they do. These are their job descriptions. The physical therapists, understand they generally fix people after they're broken. Again, I'll repeat that. Very important to have physical therapists, but they will fix people after they're broken. And the athletic trainer also treats injuries after they're broken, okay? A lot of people understand my philosophy on this idea of having a health and wellness program. You can see here the education, work environment, and licensingship of each. I don't like to say one is better or the other. It's first, what's your goal? Do you want to be a more proactive department or reactive? The fire service is reactive. You know, the saying is, it's how many bodies on scene, not how many engines, yet they spend more money on their budget fixing the apparatus versus fixing the firefighters. And that frustrates the hell out of me. All right, because the greatest asset a fire department has is its firefighters. So we want to have a proactive approach, and we went with the strength coach model. As you can see in this slide, it's more injury prevention. A lot of the injuries that I have been associated with, and over a dozen fire departments from San Francisco to Detroit to everywhere else, they're more easily addressed by just getting them stronger. Once we show those numbers that we are improving, then we can get the backside of the athletic trainer. I think you're doing a disservice by starting with the athletic trainer first, which again, they can be both certified coach and athletic trainer, but the athletic trainer now needs to know more performance training and the strength coach needs to know more rehabilitation. You need to both. So which direction do you want to go? I would think you'd have greater success if you found the right strength coach. You could have great success also, Fairfax County, with an athletic trainer. They have also done it. Same with San Antonio. They also have a great athletic trainer. But you have to have that right person, right? You have to have that individual that can cross the gaps of both. So really understand proactive and reactive. You know, maybe you get lucky, I don't know. But it is possible. But I'm really cautious of just cut and paste and going, well, they're doing it, so let's do it like that. Look at what your department needs, right? Really take a second to step back and go, which direction do we want to go? I think the athletic trainer in the long term will take longer to see the return on investment versus the strength coach, which would get you the athletic trainer faster, because you do need both over time, as well as a physical therapist, if possible. So we here developed now the integrated development system, right? That's what I've now do, and I brought it back here. We basically have applied to a lot of the same principles, but within a health center system. We're working more with the LA County Sheriffs, LA County Fire, so not LA County Fire, I apologize, LA County Sheriffs and LAPD, more on the officer side, all right? But we want to really, you know, map the range of rehabilitation. I put this slide in here, everyone, for you to understand one thing. This is a real study, and the review demonstrated that there's a lack of information in the public domain on tactical athletes. And if you are going to work with tactical operators, you need to understand what they do. You need to spend hours with them to understand what it really is that they do. And so many times people are like, oh, I've worked with a firefighter. That's not the same. Coaching them is completely different than making them work out. So really take the time, if you're serious about going into this, about what it takes. All right. So we'll just get through this. So you have two areas, both front end and back, tactical sports medicine, and you have tactical strength training. These are the elements, as you see. One is more reconditioning and rehab. The other one is strength and conditioning. One is nutrition prescription, like my young lady friend, Megan and Maureen. The other one is nutrition education, peer support, stress reduction, diagnosis, correctives, injury, metabolic, performance. Now you've had a program to balance it from both front end and back end. The most important thing I always tell people within this industry, and I've always carried this with me, and I always kept telling myself, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And the firefighters have taught me this. They truly have. The individuals that were tough on me in the beginning became my closest friends. If you really want to know what it's like to work with these individuals, I can tell you real fast. Years ago, when I first started, I told you I wasn't accepted much, but over time, I was. there was a period of time where I was invited to a Christmas party in the beginning, and I was so excited, but it didn't really go too well. It was my first year, and it didn't go well. Years later, one of the firefighters at that Christmas party came to me in my office, nicest guy in the world. And he said, I have to apologize to you, coach. 6 years ago, I was rude to you at that Christmas party, and it's been beating me down. And I just wanted to apologize. 6 years ago, this individual came to apologize. That's who we're working with. The integrity, the character, the values, the words honor, courage, devotion to duty, they really do exist in this line of work. And you have to also hold yourself to that higher standard. You have to be the coach. You can't be necessarily their friend or their buddy. You can't fall into the rumor mill. You can't get caught up in talking about others, because you're going to be privy to a number of things, a ton of information. And it's your responsibility to respect that. Maybe you're just the gateway to help somebody. Maybe you're just the one who goes, hey, I think you need help. That happens. Guys young firefighters, old firefighters, they would call me up and say, coach, could you get me out of the darkness? Maybe it's not my job to be a therapist, but maybe it's my job to hold their hands as they walk down this path and get them the help that they need. That's what the coach does. That's what he is. That's the job. It isn't football. It isn't, wins and losses. You're just trying to give them their hope and their life back so they can go home to their families safe. And that's all I have for everybody today. Do we have any questions?
We sure do. Thank you so much, John. That was just so full of great wisdom and practical tips. I really appreciate you putting that together, and I know everyone on today does as well. We do have a couple of questions. I know our time is a little bit over, but if you have a little extra room in your schedule to address them.
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. One question that came in was an appreciation of your survey for the firefighters, their wellness interest survey, so to speak. Is that something that you can share, or just share kind of an outline of, or anything like that?
If anybody knows me, I can share everything with you. Trust me, I didn't invent anything. I probably stole it or got it from somebody else smarter than me. There's guys out there like Mick Sterling and Jay Dawes. Feel free to reach out, email me. I'll be happy to share all that stuff with you. The survey,
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Okay, and then another question we have. Hi, John, awesome presentation. Are you able to elaborate on what you included in the low back pain / injury education and how you delivered it?
Oh, that's a great question. First, we did start with some of the foam rolling stuff. We put out a manual on the foam roller. We did a hands-on session where I taught them like, hey, do this, do that. Then we started to, kind of show them some correctives. But more importantly, we talked about lateral core strength. Actually, people get caught up in front wall strength. And what you start to realize is they work in unilateral movements with uneven loads. So they're always crooked. So we started to get them to do more side planks and stuff. And that really started to make an enormous difference. That simple thing, side planks with a hip flexion, side plank with a leg lift, side left plank. And the old guys were like, man, that stuff feels great. And you got to start simple. Don't make it complex. And then you build momentum.
100% agree.
Let me actually start by saying this. Give them a little bit, walk away. Let them come back and go, what else you got?
Exactly. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Even work with my own experience with working with tactical professionals, the best thing that you can do is give them something short, simple, that improves their quality of life. Okay, another question we have. Excellent program background and development insights. How closely did you work with community rehab providers to facilitate program advances during injury recovery?
The 10 people that I talked about, the rehab specialists that came out and spent the day with us, I developed relationships. That's my job. I develop relationships and I keep an open mind. And we worked closely with any of the physical therapists. Like I actually, developed really good professional relationships with them, and we would share ideas because we understood it was for the betterment of the firefighter. And I believe in that. I think that you really need to actually develop those relationships with the outside personnel. If anybody thinks this ain't the military, if you think you're going to do it all yourself, you're insane, or your ego's just too big. So it's very important to have the network of individuals and cultivate them with like-minded professionals.
Excellent. Agree with that as well, for sure. Another question, any advice regarding implementing the WFI within a department? Planning on incorporating the WFI into a battalion training assigned to me to hopefully expand it being used as our annual assessment.
So we did implement, the Wi-Fi, and then we started to add more stuff. Like we did all the FMS before all that, and we did all the other things. The most important thing you have to understand that when you do these things, it's not a science project. Why can't it be fun? The funniest story I'll share with you on that was about the second year I did those Wi-Fi, I was scrambling. Like I was exhausted running around trying to teach them how to turn on a metronome and whatnot. But I didn't care. They were doing it. And then I said, hey, if you do 5 things, you get a duty shirt. Okay, that made more people do it. And I made it fun. And what started to happen was more and more people started doing it. And there was a time I knew we crossed the threshold when one of the firefighters, young guy, said, this is ridiculous. I'm not doing it. It's got nothing to do with the job. And I said, okay, you don't have to, right? That's absolutely fine. You don't have to. But I want you to understand, a captain grabbed him and said, look, kid, coach is our 911. When we need him, he's there. So we do these things out of respect for him, and it's fun. And it gives him information so he can make us better. And the kid said, okay. And he goes, so if you get hurt, don't call coach. And the kid's like, all right, I'll do it. And also understand that people would show up and not want to do it. And I'd go, that's fine. I didn't criticize them. I didn't know if they had a hard shift. They were tired. Their back hurts. It wasn't like personal. But eventually those individuals would be like, hey, coach, can I go walk on the track? And I'd be like, go ahead. I had one firefighter. He was the guy who cooked bacon and bacon grease under the sink. And one day he showed up like 8 years after the assessments, like 100 pounds lighter. I was like, whoa, what happened? He goes, my daughter, can I do the assessments, coach? Oh my God, yes, please. And that's what you're looking for. You got to make it fun. You got to make it positive. They get beat down enough. Stop guilting people in this line of industry.
Absolutely. And by doing that, by keeping it fun, keeping it positive, keeping it aligned with what they're interested in working on, and keeping it voluntary, it can not only build really positive momentum and engagement in a program, but it also helps save you some legal battles too. So definitely a good idea to go that route, the positive route, the carrot route, so to speak, instead of trying to go in with any kind of punitive measures. For sure. Great. Just one last question.
Second. Hold one second.
Go ahead.
Understand, everybody, when I say be positive, I'm not talking about being a cheerleader. Yeah. No, they're firefighters. Treat them as adults. Treat them with respect. Hey, if you don't want to do it, don't do it. You have that right? But at the same time, care about them. Like, don't guilt them. Don't demean them. Don't put them down.
Exactly. So true. And I think it's amazing that you're able to do that, because with such a large group, sometimes they can do that to each other in some settings. So you have to be very mindful of that too, and watch out for that too. For those of us on the call, or those on the call who are talking to departments who just haven't really had this on their radar yet, what would be your first step? How would you start that conversation, and who would you start that conversation with within a department?
That's a great question. I would probably tell you 2 directions, depending on your department. Okay, you have the EMS side or your training side. They're going to be your either 2 ways to go about this, to get your foot in the door. Usually the long road would be the academy, like, Coach Beta started with the academy and let it grow. I would probably say that's where you're more likely going to start with this. And that would probably be easier for the individual to gain their trust and such. Again, I got lucky, I got thrown into the fire den, but at the same time, if I'm looking back, I would say that the training division or your EMS division, and understand there are different caveats. You have county and you have cities, and there are different elements, how to work around those 2 things politically.
Absolutely agree. But that's a great starting point, and that I'm sure is going to be very helpful for folks. Also, if they wanted to learn a little bit more about the field before they have that conversation, they're welcome to check out, of course, our NSCA TSAC-F certification, where you can study the different types of job tasks and environments that these firefighters are asked to work in, and different types of fitness that they need to incorporate into their routine. It's a great start. It's not going to get, there are other things that you can do to supplement that education, and still the same. You want to go into a department humble and willing to listen and willing to learn, because every department is unique, but that does give you some good foundational information as well. John, did you have anything else you wanted to add, or Maureen or Megan or Annette?
Well, first of all, thank you to everyone, Maureen, Mandy, everyone, Annie. Like, this is a lot of fun, and I really appreciate it. Hopefully, these individuals also are carrying the torch. I just happen to be lucky at the right place at the right time, but understand that it wasn't just me. You have to utilize these individuals as well. This unique field that we're working in is very actually small. So I would recommend most people out there to reach out to Annie and Maureen and Megan. And God, I can go on and on. There's Jake and Fairfax, and there's Jeff and Austin Fire, and there's so many great coaches. Fernando at LA County. Reach out to these people. Trust me, I'll tell you, they'll help you. Trust me, they will. And I think that's really where you got to start, and put your ego in check.
Absolutely. We are all here to support each other. And again, thank you. I want to just thank you all on behalf of the NSCA for all the work that you're doing in the field. We are excited to do everything that we can to support you and to continue to help you grow the industry and advance the industry as well. Annette, do you have a couple of things you want to add in, maybe where they can find you on YouTube?
Yes. First of all, I wanted to answer. I saw Rob Hartman snuck in at the last minute and asked about Coach Hofman's opinion on blueberries. So if you haven't been to a TSAC conference, Coach, could you tell us that?
Yeah, he's killing me, that guy. I love him. Eat more blueberries. The joke on that, everybody, if you haven't heard, is don't take away what they love. If you put blueberries in their ice cream, I'll call it healthy, because they probably never ate blueberries before. So let them add their ice cream. Just put some blueberries in it, and I'll call it a day.
Exactly. And then I also saw Walker hopped on. He had a question actually about getting hired with the fire department. And I'm just going to ask you, you can go ahead and email me if you would like to. And my email is az@firerescuefitness.com. And I'm happy to go through some of that stuff with you as well. And then if you want to share this presentation after the fact, just go and hop on our YouTube channel, Wellness Pros and Fire and Rescue. It'll be on there in a couple days. I'm kind of slow with all this stuff, but that's all I've got. Megan, Maureen, do you have anything to add?
No, thank you, John. It was great.
Yeah, this was awesome. I really appreciate it.
Well, with that, I think we can wrap up. Thank you again so much to Mandy and the NSCA. We really appreciate you, and I'm glad everyone could tune in today. And thank you, John. We appreciate you as well.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much. Everyone have a great weekend.
Yes, you too. Thank you.